Hello and welcome to this special Foster Care Institute online training webinar, Positive Parenting Solutions. I'm your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, founder and director of the Foster Care Institute, and I'm so thankful, so grateful that you're taking part in this webinar. Throughout the years, my wife and I have had the blessing, the wonderful opportunity of being a foster parent to over 60 plus children who have come through our home, who have made our home a family. We've had the blessing of adopting 3 of those children. We've experienced 4 failed adoptions. We have had as many as, get this, now if you've read some of my books, you know what the answer is here. We've had as many as 11 children in our home at the same time. I know, crazy, isn't it? Including 7 in diapers. So I know the unique challenges that it takes to be a foster parent. It is indeed a very unique lifestyle that our friends and our family members will never truly be able to understand. When we bring into our home children who have suffered from trauma, children with anxieties, children who have issues of attachment and trust, it is at times, a very difficult, again, there's that word, lifestyle. Indeed, over the years, I've had so many children come through my home, and in my home, if you've read some of my books, you know there's no label. There's no foster child, no adopted child, no biological child. They're all my children. They're all members of my family, and I love them unconditionally. Indeed, I believe children in foster care need 3 things: stability, structure, but what they need most is unconditional love. You know, I hear so many times, Dr. John, I couldn't do what you do. It would hurt too much to give the children back. And my response is, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. These children do need structure and stability and consistency, but what they need most of all is unconditional love, so that when they leave our homes, for whatever reason it might be, for reunification, for adoption, for transitioning or aging out, whatever it might be, our hearts at times do break. But my friend, that's a gift. We're giving that child a gift of our hearts. We're giving the child a gift of love, because we may be, you and I, as foster parents, we might be the only person who's ever truly loved that child, so that when they do leave, years from now, they'll recognize that, hey, in some time in my life, somebody loved me. And that's what we do as foster parents. If you see my TED Talk or you visited the Foster Care Institute, you know I've devoted my entire life to helping children in foster care, and more importantly, to make the foster care system a better one. My doctoral studies were in foster care studies, and I travel the nation and globe now working with foster care agencies and child welfare programs, as well as legislators from across the United States, trying to make the system a better one for all indeed. Our goal during this webinar is to bring awareness to the role of positive parenting when it comes for caring for children in foster care. And our objective is to increase your awareness of positive parenting and how it impacts foster parenting, and gain an understanding of how to develop and implement positive parenting strategies so we are best able to aid children and families in crisis in our lives. Now let's very briefly look at children in foster care. When they're taken from, I want you to imagine a 7-year-old girl suddenly late at night, perhaps as the girl in my book, or A Different Home, a New Foster Child Story, late at night taken from her mother and her father, taken sometimes from her siblings, her stuffed animals, her toys, her pets, her house, her home, her extended family, her grandparents, aunts, uncles, her neighbors, from school, perhaps she goes to church, everything she knows late at night without any explanation sometimes, and taken from all that's familiar to her and placed into a strange home with strange people. A home like yours or mine, and people like your family or my family. Now, I want you to imagine that despite all of the anxiety and trauma that child has faced before being placed in foster care, being placed into your and my home is a time of great anxiety. These children are scared. They're confused. It's a time of tremendous uncertainty. And when they come to my house and perhaps your house, they have these questions. Why am I here? When do I go home? Will I ever see my mommy or daddy again? Is it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Does mommy not love me anymore? For sometimes these children, it's a time of guilt. I recall when we had 5 children come to our home, and the oldest was 13. I read about this in the book Love and Mayhem. And the oldest was 13, and he was in charge of the family finances as well as looking after his younger siblings, while his mother and her 2 teenage boyfriends were running a meth lab inside the home. The boy was very intelligent, was doing very, very well in school academically, but as you can imagine, the stress and anxiety placed upon him, he was going to school and unleashing it in bouts of anger and was in trouble for his behavior. Well, when the caseworker and the 3 deputies came to remove the children, they tell me later on that the house had no running water, no heat, no air, no food, no plumbing, no electricity. There were feces on the beds, feces on the floors, feces on the bench tops, human and dog feces. And when the children came to our home, they wore nothing except the clothes on their back, stapled together, and we had to burn the clothing because the clothing was contaminated with both meth and feces. That 13-year-old boy had tremendous guilt. He blamed himself. He thought he let his siblings down. He thought he let his mother down. He thought he let his family down. And it took him some time to escape that guilt, to recognize that he was not at fault. Sometimes these children come to our homes unable to express themselves. In the book Fostering Love, One Foster Parent's Journey, I tell a story about a young boy, a 4-year-old boy, who came to our home. And he came with his younger sister. His sister, I believe, was 6 months old at the time. And we had, at that time, 6 children in our home. And my wife was bathing the 4-year-old boy in our bathroom, and I was holding the baby, cooking dinner, helping the children, the older children, our children, with homework. Laundry was being done, the normal day-to-day chores and responsibilities when we come home from work that need to be taken care of. And I heard my wife yell out to me, "John." And I said, "Just a minute," and I could hear the urgency in her voice the second time around when she yelled out, "John." So I gave the baby to my oldest daughter, and I went into the bathroom, and the 4-year-old boy, my wife was drooped over the 4-year-old boy in tears, and tears are rolling down her cheeks. And I said, "What is it, sweetheart? What is it?" And my wife just looked at me and pointed at the boy's hair, and one word escaped her lips, and those words were this: "Look." I said, "I can't see anything." She said, "Look." And she parted back the boy's blonde hair. And there were small, dark, circular marks upon his scalp. Cigarette burns. And there were cigarette burns upon his roof of his mouth, his tongue, and his genitals by his mother. And she placed those cigarette burns there, of course, for the evidence to be erased, so she could hide the evidence. This 4-year-old boy, as you can imagine, was completely unable to express himself. There were no emotions in this young boy. No anger, no frustration, no sadness, no confusion, no doubt, no anxiety, no mystery. There's nothing. He only showed emotion one time, which I read about in Fostering Love, but the rest of the time he was unable to express himself due to the tremendous trauma that experience. And sometimes these children come to our home with feelings of uncertainty, with feelings of guilt, unable to express themselves. To be sure, when they're placed into our homes, it is again a time of anxiety. For you see, the children in care may simply not understand why they've been placed into our home. Confusion abounds. Some may see it as an illogical, irrational move. Some, like the 13-year-old, may blame themselves. Some may feel they are no longer loved. Others may feel abandoned. A few years back, my wife and I were caring for 3 teenage high school seniors in her house, all from 3 different families. And they each came from different paths. You can imagine it was a very unique time in our household with 3 high school seniors, with a lot of laughter, but it was a lot of angst to be sure. Well, one teenager in particular, he was 17 years of age, and he had been bouncing around from home to home with his mother, with her various husbands and her various boyfriends. And he was on 9 psychotropic drugs, mainly just to sedate himself, to be sedated, and to keep him quiet. And one boyfriend, of only a month, said to the mother, "Make a decision. It's either me or your son. Choose." Well, she made a choice. And she chose the boyfriend of 1 month over her son. She helped her 17-year-old son pack. She showed him the door, and he ended up homeless. Long story short, he came to our home, and he felt abandoned because he was abandoned. The National Children's Traumatic Stress Network defines traumatic stress as this: the physical and emotional responses of a child to events that threaten the life or physical integrity of the child or someone critically important to the child. Let's look at this again. The physical and emotional responses of a child to events that threaten the life or physical integrity of the child or someone critically important to the child. This is what traumatic stress is, as defined by the National Children's Traumatic Stress Network. Now, we know that when these children come to our home, they are facing traumatic stress. Indeed, there are forms of complex trauma. Complex trauma occurs when the trauma continues through the repetition of similar events or an accumulation of separate ones. Complex trauma happens over a period of time as traumatic events reinforce learning. Now, there are 3 E's of trauma. Let's look at these E's of trauma. There is, first of all, the event. The traumatic event includes forms of abuse, forms of domestic or community violence, forms of a natural disaster, maybe an accident or a war. The event causes trauma. The second E is the experience. Now, the experience, of course, is difficult to measure because it relates to how someone reacted to a particular event. This experience may differ from you to me, from person to person, from child to child, from one culture to another culture. My wife, as you may know if you've seen my TED Talk or read some of my books, or perhaps seen me speak in person, is a doctor of nutrition, naturopathic medicines. She hails from the country of Australia, which has, of course, different culture. So her experience is often different than my experience based upon her culture. Experience may also depend upon genders or age groups. And finally, the third E of trauma is the effect. The reaction the person has to a traumatic event. Now, this experience, whatever this traumatic event might be, abandonment, neglect, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, this experience, this effect, can change or alter a person's well-being, as well as their behavior. Their behavior now and their behavior in the future. As you can imagine, the traumatic event, the traumatic effect, can have long-term impact on development. We often see these in young children. Now, as we know, the formative years of children between the ages of 1 and 4 are perhaps the most important years in a child's development. And if the child experiences a traumatic event during that time, the effect can indeed have long-term impact upon their future development. So why do children come into foster care? Well, let's review. It's because of a number of traumatic experiences, perhaps prolonged separation. maybe death of a family member, various forms of abuse, witness of abuse to others, homelessness. I think back to one evening when my wife and I, this is perhaps our fourth year in foster parenting, and we had that unwritten rule. Perhaps you have that rule as well. We had that unwritten rule in our life that we made the decision at the time not to care for a child older than our biological children. And at the time, we had a phone call one afternoon from the caseworker, and she asked if we would take care of a 12-year-old boy. At the time, my oldest daughter was 10. And I said to the caseworker, well, we would rather not because our oldest is only 10, and we don't want to because of this household rule of ours. And she told me the story. It was the young boy's birthday. And he and his mother were driving along a major city in the United States in the South. And the mother pulled over along the very, very busy intersection, the highway, if you will, a major highway. And the mother said, son, it's your birthday. Please get out of the car, go to the trunk, and get the presents out, and we'll celebrate your birthday right now. And the boy, of course, eager, filled with excitement, thrilled at the prospect of opening up some presents on his birthday, excited that his mother had not forgotten, jumped out of the car, closed the door, and as soon as he did, the mother sped off. The mother sped off, leaving her son stranded on the side of this major highway on his birthday. Well, when I heard this story, as you can imagine, my heart leapt out of my chest, traveled across the state, and was firmly planted within that boy. And my wife and I prayed about it. And we told the caseworker, yes, we will try this. We will try it. I remember late that night, this poor boy lying on the couch at night, trying to muffle the sobs in the pillow. And I told my wife, we have to do something. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, I went to the local Walmart, 45 minutes away, and we celebrated his birthday the next morning. But this poor boy, homeless, the traumatic experience and the effect upon him, so heart-wrenching. For some children, it's drugs and alcohol in the family. Others might have experienced neglect or abandonment. Perhaps one of their family members have been imprisoned. Now, when a child is placed into a foster care environment, to a foster care home, there is something known as placement disruptions. There is the emotional, social, and psychological effects of these placement disruptions. When a child is moved multiple times from one house to the next, from one home to the next, from one family to the next, from one school to the next, it's known as multiple disruptions. And as you can imagine, mental health is threatened with multiple disruptions. As they go from home to home and family to family, trust evaporates. Attachment and relationships dissolve. And indeed, as I write in the book, Helping Foster Children in School, the academic performances for these children who suffer multiple disruptions are indeed suffer as well. In fact, they're lower than your traditional students. Your child in foster care on average is 18 months behind academically. So it's important to remember this. My friends, it's important to remember that children who suffer from trauma are doing the very best they can. Children who suffer from trauma are doing the best they can. So, how do we help? How do we help these children who have experienced these forms of trauma, who have experienced these neglect and abandonment and abuse, who have experienced such horrific experiences and they're suffering from anxiety. How do we help them? Positive parenting is one way we can help them. Positive parenting helps to develop and create a committed relationship between both the child and you, the parent, the adult. Positive parenting is based upon both communication and respect. And positive parenting focuses on helping the children understand both the what and the why of discipline and behavior, as well as self-control. One way to help a child who's experienced trauma is not to take their behavior personally. I know, Dr. John, easier said than done. I understand. I understand. But when a child is placed into her home, and again, they're confused. They do not know perhaps why they're here. They may think they will never see their family again. They may believe they are not loved. They may believe it's their fault. They're scared. They are frightened. And perhaps they are suffering from anger management issues. Maybe they have reactive attachment issues. Perhaps they have eating disorders or sleep anxieties or other forms of trust, whatever it might be. And maybe they lash out at us. We need to remember it has nothing to do with us. When that child is screaming and yelling at me and cursing me, I need to remember it has nothing to do with me. It's not about me. This is about the child. The child is overwhelmed with emotions and feelings that he cannot process. He cannot properly process or understand. These emotions that are swirling inside of him, that are overwhelming him, he doesn't know how to deal with it. And he may lash out. And if you're like me as a foster parent, you have been cursed out and sworn at and maybe hit, perhaps false accusations made against you. Again, do not take that behavior personally. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the child. The child is scared. The child is confused. The child is upset. The child does not know how to do it. Remember, the child is living with strangers, you and I. The child does not know how long they'll be with us. The child does not know how to trust us because every adult in their life has betrayed them in some fashion. So again, they may lash out. They may say things. They may do things that upset us. But we, as foster parents, are not to take this behavior personally. This is part of positive parenting. Perhaps this is the first step in positive parenting. Do not take their behavior personally. It has nothing to do with you. It's about the child and what the child is experiencing, what the child is feeling. You instead need to be in control. You need to make sure that when the child is upset towards you, not at you, but towards you, that you need to remain in control. You need to regulate your own emotions. When the child is yelling at you, you are regulating your emotions. You are in control. You need to be patient. You need to be generous. And you need to be, most of all, the loving parent every child wants, every child needs. Part of positive parenting is forming relationships. It is so important. It is essential. Indeed, it is necessary for every young child to form a healthy relationship with at least one main caretaker or at least one adult figure in their life in order to develop socially, in order to develop emotionally. And sadly, you and I know as foster parents that so many of these children who come into our homes and into our lives and join our families have never had a positive, healthy relationship with an adult. And as a result, they suffer socially. They suffer emotionally. So we need to form a positive, healthy relationships. And we do that by a number of ways. To begin with, we look for ways to spend time with each child, each day, individually. We need to give them the positive and emotional attention they need every day so they do not seek it out in other ways, in negative ways. Now, you're saying to Dr. John, how can I do this? I have so many children in my home. Hey, I understand. As I noted to you earlier, my wife and I have had as many as 11 children in our home at the same time, and we've never had help in that regard. So how do we spend time with each child individually each day? Well, it can be difficult, but it can be as little as 10 to 15 minutes each day. And that makes a big difference. Look for, perhaps it is standing by the dishwasher, doing dishes with one of them, and talking about the day. Maybe another one is going for a walk around the neighborhood with a dog. Maybe another one is reading a story at night. Maybe another one is folding laundry. Maybe another one is playing catch in the backyard. 10 to 15 minutes every day. And while you're doing it, you're giving them the positive and emotional attention they need, so they do not go to school seeking it out, so they do not go online seeking it out, so they do not go on social media seeking it out in negative and harmful and destructive and dangerous ways. Now remember, when they're lashing out at you, we can't take their behavior personally. There is a reason the child is misbehaving. We need to identify what that reason is. We need to identify the reason behind their actions. This misbehavior may seem reasonable and logical to the child. So we need to determine why the child is behaving in this fashion to help us better understand the child's behavior. Another skill of positive parenting is to identify trauma-related needs. Learn and understand how the child and the family have been impacted by trauma and traumatic events. One of the things that's most important for me as a foster parent is that I want to learn as much as I possibly can about the child's history prior to coming into my home, as well as the family history. When I have an understanding of the child and family's history in regards to how it may have been impacted by trauma and traumatic events, this will help me to be better equipped to provide the child support services the child might need. If the mother has a history of alcohol abuse, perhaps during pregnancy, this will help me understand perhaps conditions of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. If the child had been sexually abused by a parent or a caregiver, this will help me understand the child's behavior. We need to identify their trauma-related needs by understanding how trauma affected the child and the family. And we do this, we can then find services for the child that are based on his special and unique circumstances. Now, when we're talking to the child about their past history, their traumatic events, we need to make sure that we do so in language-appropriate conversations. How you talk to a 10-year-old child will be very, very different than how you talk to a 7-year-old child, which will be very, very different than how you talk to a 4-year-old child, which will be different than how you talk to a 13-year-old child and a 17-year-old child. Your conversations need to be language appropriate. Part of positive parenting is understanding the brain development and the age-appropriate behavior. Not only is there a reason for the child's behavior, it's also important to understand how the brain develops from the child. Here at the Foster Care Institute, we have several webinars based upon that, include Child Development Part 1 and Child Development Part 2, and I'd encourage you to watch that to get a better understanding about brain development. It's important to note here that young children cannot reason, as part of the brain is not fully developed for decision making and for consequences. Indeed, there are many people who will state that the brain does not fully develop until the age of 25. Studies now suggest that age might be 30 years of age. So it should come as no surprise that the children in our home cannot reason. They cannot make those decisions. They cannot understand consequences because their brain is not fully developed yet. This is part of positive parenting, understanding that. When a child makes a poor decision in our home, or a child is misbehaving in a particular way, the child may deny doing anything wrong. We need to help the child acknowledge that indeed a poor decision was made. We need to help a child acknowledge their feelings. And we help them acknowledge their feelings and help them acknowledge that a poor decision was made. We at the same time need to reassure the child that the consequence they've received is not to hurt them, but to help them understand the importance of good decisions, of good behavior, and ultimately to protect the child. If the child should go online on social media sites and conversing with people that could be potentially sexual predators, we need to talk to them about these decisions and how these are dangerous decisions and how the consequences of perhaps taking away the electronic device for a period of time is done so to teach them the importance of good decision making and ultimately to protect the child from a dangerous situation. If a child is yelling at you, we need to respond accordingly. Avoid yelling and being aggressive towards a child. We need to lower the intensity of our voice. If possible, when we're talking to the child in a lower tone, we need to come down to their eye level. Hold hands if necessary and use simple words. I see that you're upset. I hear in your voice that you're scared. I can hear that you're confused. It looks to me as if you are angry. Simple words, giving those emotions words. We need to help them become calm. We need to help them develop breathing techniques and relation skills. Tell them it's okay to feel the way she does. Again, give words to the child's emotions. I see that you're upset, and that's okay. I hear that you are scared. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be angry. Acknowledge how they're feeling, give words to their emotions, and tell them it's okay to have those feelings. That's part of positive parenting. Another part of positive parenting is redirection. Redirection is a form of discipline that is becoming much more popular in society. Perhaps you've heard about it or read about it. Redirection allows us as a foster parent to guide, to steer their misbehavior from one that is inappropriate to one that is more appropriate. When a child is redirected, it allows him to explore new opportunities, new experiences, and perhaps even learn new skills. We have many examples of redirection in the Foster Care Institute Discipline and Children in Foster Care webinar. I encourage you to visit the Foster Care Institute to watch that webinar for much more on redirection. So many times children in foster care are placed in their homes and they've never had a positive or kind word said to them. And that is heartbreaking. There is the old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And we know that is a lie, a vicious lie. Words do have power, the power to hurt and the power to heal, the power to break and the power to strengthen. As foster parents, part of positive parenting is using the power of praise. So find words and opportunities to praise a child every single day in every way at all time. Things like this. Thank you for helping with the dishes. You are the best dishwasher helper in my family. I really appreciate it when you take out the garbage. I don't think there's a better person in this house who does it. Hey, thank you so much for helping feed the dog. Look how happy the dog is to see you. Wow, you cleaned up your room all on your own. You are fantastic. Wow, that took you a long time, but you did it, and I'm so proud of you. Or things like this. Hey, what's a favorite part of your day? Wow, that sounds exciting. I really enjoy doing the dishes with you. Sometimes you just say nothing and you just smile. Just smile at the child. And powers of praise include catching them in the act of being good. Look for opportunities when a child is doing the right thing and behaving in a positive way, and stop what you're doing and praise them for doing just that. You're catching them in the act of being good. That is positive parenting, and it's a powerful way of helping a child heal. And then there's the power of yes. Sometimes a child may ask you a question and you might be quick to respond with a no or a negative response. Can I stay up an hour later to watch this? Or can I have a bunch of cookies? And your quick response is going to be no. Instead, look for ways to help the child with an acceptable alternative. Well, you can't stay up for another hour, but you can read a book for the next 30 minutes or go outside and play basketball for 30 minutes. Which would you like to do? Well, you can't have a bunch of cookies, but how about we make up a bowl of fruit? So look for different alternatives than the traditional negative response that you might quickly go to. The power of yes. Make no mistake, children need routine and they thrive on routine. Put in place defined routines for morning, after school, before bedtime, and try to stick to them. For example, in our household, our routine looks something like this. I personally get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and have some prayer and devotional time, and then I'll go wake up the children at 6:30. There is bed making, teeth brushing, getting dressed, coming down for breakfast, having a breakfast, and then going to school. After school, the children come home, and the first thing they do is, what's that? You guessed it, wash their hands and have a cup of water. And then, because 8 glasses a day of water. And then we sign agendas, we look at homework, we give them a snack, healthy snack, and then we begin the homework. After homework is over, there's some playtime, and then it's dinner time. After dinner, there's some household chores, perhaps sweeping the floor, or clearing the table, or taking the garbage out. And then it's bath time or shower time. And then it's reading some more, and maybe some playtime. And then it is bedtime. And we try to be consistent in that routine. Of course, the routine differs in the weekends, differs on the holidays, and differs over the summertime. But there is, to be sure, a routine in the weekends and on holidays and the summer vacation as well. Now, of course, there are times we need to be flexible about that because a special movie might come on, or maybe there is a basketball or baseball game, or maybe a band concert, or maybe there might be a party to attend. So flexibility is important at the same time. And allow them to be part of the routine. Allow them to be part of the routine. Positive parenting includes the power of distraction. Learn how to distract a child from engaging in behavior that is quite simply not acceptable. Look for ways to bring humor to a situation and to lighten the mood. The power of laughter. Make no mistake, children need sleep. They need quality sleep, that is, uninterrupted sleep. Because studies show that sleep promotes growth. Sleep helps the heart. Sleep helps fight sickness. It boosts attention span and boosts learning. And children need about 8 hours of sleep a night. Now, of course, that the need for sleep is even longer for teens. Teens need sleep even more than young children as their bodies and their brains develop. And if you've ever had a teenager in your home, or if you recall the time when you were a teenager, you recognize, yes, those teenagers do like to sleep in the weekends because they need it. Now, many children in foster care suffer from sleep anxiety, and we have a webinar here at the Foster Care Institute about sleep anxiety, which you might want to look at. Positive parenting deals with time in. Time in is a form of discipline when misbehavior occurs. When a child is placed in time in, child is placed and remains in close proximity to you instead of away from you. Time in allows a child to be close to you or adult instead of away, as in time out. The child's in time out, they're generally away from you. Time in, they're in close proximity or they're near you. Children are likely to feel that their needs are being considered when they're in time in. There can be a connection between parent and the child before the correction is presented, and children are given time to properly process a range of feelings. Parents don't feel out of control or create a power struggle to keep a child in the time out. This child does not feel isolated or shamed or scared when they are in time in. Time in might look like this. And we describe this in the book, the Foster Care Survival Guide. Time in might look like this. Child makes a poor decision or poor behavior. Child is placed in time in. Time in might be at the kitchen table while you are doing dishes, or maybe on the lounge room sofa while you are folding laundry. Perhaps time in is the two of you sitting together working on a puzzle, or maybe you on a couch next to the child while you're reading a book. Time in allows a child to think about what they've done, maybe even talk to you about the choices they have made, perhaps even open up to you. It gives you and the child an opportunity to talk about the real issue at hand. For much more, check out our online Foster Care Institute training webinar on discipline in children in foster care, as well as the book, The Foster Care Survival Guide. Time in is an important part of positive parenting. Indeed, safety is a priority as well. Child needs to feel safe in your home at all times. Child can be triggered by noises, by nighttime, by darkness, or other ways that we might not expect. You need to remind the child over and over and over, and in fact ensure them that they are safe. Remind them that they are safe. Sweetheart, that's just thunder outside. You're okay. That was just a bump in the house. You're okay. I know it's a little bit dark. Would you like me to put on a night light in the bathroom for you or in your bedroom? You're going to be okay. I'm here with you. Remind them that they are safe. Ensure safety at all times. They need that feeling of safety. Positive parenting encourages your child to be a problem solver. If siblings are fighting, encourage them to find the solution to it. Other ways to help in positive parenting is to watch for signs. Watch for signs that perhaps their behavior is escalating. Of course, record their behavior and progress at all times in a documentation book of some sort. Provide choices. Continue learning and seeking resources and asking for help. Be on the lookout for trauma triggers and look for patterns. Be emotionally and physically available to the child. If you are working on your computer or talking on the phone or perhaps even watching a movie and the child comes to you and wants to talk to you, this is a time to turn the TV off. This is a time to put the tablet or computer down. This is a time to turn the phone off and listen and be available physically and emotionally for that child, because if they're ready to talk to you, positive parenting is a skill that insists that you are there to listen to them. You are there for them emotionally. You are there for them physically. Now, don't expect therapy and treatments to quickly resolve all issues. To be sure, there are those times when children need professional therapy and counseling. But it doesn't resolve itself quickly. There takes time. Indeed, we've heard that love heals many wounds, but don't expect the fact that you are loving the child with all that you have and all of your heart and loving the child unconditionally to be the quick fix, so to speak. There have been those times when children have come to my home and perhaps your home, and these children don't know how to play because they've never been given the opportunity to play as a child. Allow the child to be a child. Encourage them to play. Play therapy is a wonderful form of healing. So encourage a child to color. Encourage a child to draw. Sit down with them and color. You may have to teach them how to color. You may have to teach them how to draw. You may have to teach them how to roll a ball back and forth. You may have to teach them how to throw a frisbee. You may have to teach them how to dress some dolls. You may have to teach them how to play. Encourage them to use their imagination. Encourage them to be a child, to laugh, to run around, and sometimes even to get dirty. If it's raining and the child's outside and they jump in the mud puddle, it's not the end of the world. Because that child might be healing a little bit through laughter, through imagination. And that's okay. Part of positive parenting is taking time for yourself. If you've been to some of my training sessions and keynote speeches, and you know I'm a firm believer that if you can't care for yourself, you can't care for the children in your home. Positive parenting is about me time for you sometimes, putting yourself first sometimes. Because when we become burned out, when we become worn down, when we suffer from compassion fatigue or secondary traumatic stress, when we are suffering from feelings of grief and loss, when we are worn down, that we can't care for the children that are in our home. Part of positive parenting is recognizing that you need some time for yourself. Finally, how you treat the child is how he will treat himself. If you're harsh to the child, he will be harsh to himself. But if you are gentle towards the child, if you're respectful towards the child, if you're kind and loving to the child, no matter what they're doing to you, remember, do not take their behavior personally. If you continue to be respectful and kind and loving and gentle, eventually, this is how they will treat themselves. And this may take some time. Your words have power. Your smile has power. Positive parenting skills incorporates all of these skills. For much more, visit the Foster Care Institute for a wide range of training webinars, over 70 hours of online training webinars, printable certificates, CEUs, 15 free ebooks, and so much more to keep you licensed as a foster parent to care for the children in need. Visit drjohndegarmofostercare.com or simply visit the Foster Care Institute for much more resources and articles. Follow me on Facebook at Dr. John DeGarmo Foster Care Institute, Twitter. If you have any questions about this particular email or any questions I can answer for you in general, please email me. Once again, please email me at drjohndegarmo@gmail.com. We've talked a few times about the book, The Foster Care Survival Guide, the essential guide for today's foster parents. I am certain this is a book that's going to be a very valuable resource for you. You can find that and many best-selling foster care books here at the Foster Care Institute. Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this webinar, but more importantly, I want to thank you for what you do. You might say to other people that you're not a hero, that you're not an angel, but my friend, you are. You are a hero and you are an angel because you are living a lifestyle, and I noted this earlier, a lifestyle that is different from so many other people. You are making the conscious decision to bring in the children who are suffering from anxiety and trauma into your home, caring for these children in need, at the sacrifice of so much. But at the end of the day, it's such a rewarding lifestyle. For me, it has been the hardest thing I've done. It has been the most rewarding thing I've done. Every child that's come through my home has made me a better person in some way. And my friend, years from now, that child may not remember your name. And years from now, my friend, that child might not remember your face. But years from now, they'll remember this. That for a time in their life, and maybe the only time in their life, somebody cared for them, somebody loved them. And that's the gift that you bring each child as a foster parent. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo. Thank you so much for taking part in this special webinar.